How's it going, everyone? Nick Templin here from Templin Scouting, and today we're going to move on to the next team in our off-season prediction videos, and that team is the Los Angeles Kings. So they should be a pretty interesting team going forward. I really love their prospect pool. Let me start off by just bringing up some of the many prospects that I expect to make the roster full-time next season. Akil Thomas, I think, will make that jump. Let's just see who are some of the other ones. Kaliev will probably play some games. He's probably not going to be a regular. Kupari's not probably ready yet. Samuel Fagemo is probably close to being ready to go, but he's not yet. Same with Dudas. And then on defense, Sean Dursey might be ready, but they might have to wait a little bit longer on him. But for sure, Byfield, Akil Thomas, and Alex Turcotte, I expect to make the team full-time next year. So how are we going to sort out this team? Because they've got a lot of centers now. So I think one of the things they're going to have to do is move Velarde to the wing. You can move Byfield up to second-line center. You get the luxury of having Alex Turcotte as your third-line center, which is incredible. Then we move... Actually, let's move Velarde up to the top line. We'll probably have Dustin Brown playing on the third line. Move Akil Thomas up to play with Byfield because they got to develop some really solid chemistry in the AHL last season. And pretty much right off the bat, you look at this team and you think that is a competitive-looking team, or at least in my opinion, I think it is. They might need to add another winger because I do like Alex Iafallo, but he's not really an ideal first-line winger. You kind of need a guy on there with Kopitar who can really score, so that might be something they look into. And as far as their defense, let's just make a few changes. So for one thing, they're probably going to bring Bjornfoot up to the top pairing. He's shown a lot, I think, that proves that he'd be capable of playing that role. I think Olli Maatta is the odd guy out here. I think that out of all the defensemen they have here, he's probably the weakest link, but they can use him as a scratch, which is, not a terrible situation for them. Cal Peterson will be the starter over Jonathan Quick. If they can try and trade him somewhere, they probably will, but I don't think they'll be able to, and I don't think they really have to, looking at the current cap situation of the team. So taking a look at some of the players that they need to re-sign this offseason. So going to LA. Nice and easy. They only have 3 players here, and while I do think Troy Grosnick is going to become a solid backup somewhere, even at 31, and he hasn't really done it yet, every game he's really played in the NHL, he's been pretty good, so it's kind of surprising nobody's taken more of a chance on him. But they do kind of have their goaltending situation already figured out for next season. As for the other players, not really going to be missing Mark Alt or Daniel Brickley too much. So looking at the restricted free agents here, some of the ones they have to sign. So they're not going to let a lot of these guys walk for free. But that being said, I don't really think that all of them are important to keep for the roster. So starting with Elias Anderson, he'll probably get somewhere in the, he really hasn't earned $1 million contract yet, so probably somewhere in the $925,000, and then give him like 2 years, and then you might want to look to ship him off somewhere potentially. Athanasiou they can probably just let walk, not even qualify him. Actually, no, he did do pretty well offensively last season, so I think they could try and look to trade his rights. So doing so, they would have to, or at least on this website, they would have to sign him to a contract. But in real life, they'd probably just sign him and, let the team that picks him up figure it out. But so we'll take a look at a potential Athanasiou trade. Definitely had a bounce back year offensively. Obviously, defensively, he's still struggling. So if you can, find a team where that doesn't have to be his role. I think Pittsburgh is a nice spot for him to land because they're always looking for speedy wingers. So just looking through some of the potential players they could acquire in return. I like Teddy Bluger, but I don't think Pittsburgh is going to want to give him up. Looking at some of the other guys here, Just trying to see, because they won't be able to get like a high-end prospect or anything like that. They might be able to get like a fourth-line roster player that they can use in the minors for a little bit just for depth, and then a pick. So I'm thinking somebody kind of like, let's just see, Drew O'Connor. Let's go for that, and then like a 4th-round pick in 2022 in return. Not a big deal for either side. I think Pittsburgh's happy to pick up a guy like Athanasiou who can contribute offensively. Meanwhile, the Kings, they get a guy who has some NHL experience. He's only 22, and they get themselves a 4th-round pick as well. So if they do their job right with drafting, they can pick up somebody that can, outperform Athanasiou, in a perfect, ideal world. You got to trust your GM on that one. So, gonna throw him down in the minors just for now. He might end up being a scratch when I take a look at all this, at the end here. Elias Anderson, still gonna try and look to trade him, but I think we'll probably use him as part of a bigger deal to acquire a winger. So just looking at more of the LA Kings players that they need, RFAs that they need to sign. One sec. There we go. So Cale Clagg is a guy they're going to want to bring back. So probably on just under $1 million again for, 2 years, prove yourself kind of deal. And then looking at some of the other guys here, I'm sure they'll sign like Blake Lizotte, who played a fair bit for them last season. They'll probably improve his contract up to... Yeah, they can probably get away with offering him $1 million. Just make sure my zeros are right. Yeah, okay. So, he played a solid role for them last season. I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of use him again, potentially as a scratch or something. So then from there, Trevor Moore they could let walk. He wasn't bad for them last season. But he is 26 now, and he's kind of not really a need for them. I mean, they could trade his RFA rights, but I don't know the value would be super high on him. So yeah. Oh yeah, and I forgot to sign Cale Clagg here, so we'll just make sure we get him in. Did I forget? I thought I did get him. I did get him already. I don't know why it doesn't take them off this list to show that you've already signed them, but it is what it is. All right, and then taking a look at some of the reserves here to see, who could potentially be signed this offseason. And, they could sign Kasper Simontaival or, Brock Faber. I really like. Helge Grans is probably kind of close. But for now, I would say none of these guys are, likely to make the actual roster. So for now, I'd say probably let them be. Also look out for Lucas Perrick in the future. I think that he could potentially be an NHL backup or, even potentially a starter at some point, depending on how his development goes. So that's a name to keep an eye on. So from there, I think it's time to take a look at a potential Elias Anderson trade. So let's take a look at our options here, at what team might be trying to offload kind of a pricey winger. So looking through the NHL here, teams looking to offload pricey wingers. Tampa could be a team, but I don't think you'd be getting any first line caliber guys from them. Potentially Vancouver, you might be able to get JT Miller from them, but I think those teams have been making a fair number of deals recently, and with the divisions going back to normal, they probably don't want to make a big deal in the Pacific. So taking a look at some of the other ones here, there's the Islanders could potentially give up Brock Nelson. Just taking a look kind of at the stats that he had last season here. So Brock Nelson, 35 points, 19 of which were goals. That's kind of in the ballpark of what they're looking for, but it is there's 4 more years on the deal, $6 million per year. Right now, that's not a problem for LA, but once they do have to sign these guys like Turcotte and Byfield, Akil Thomas, Gabe Velarde, that's going to be much harder to afford at that point. So I think he's probably not the ideal pickup for them. So looking at some of the other teams, maybe Zach Parise, but that kind of gets into the same kind of area of difficulty. Looking at the, let's see, St. Louis Blues maybe. So taking a look at some of the wingers that they have potentially available. Not sure that I'm seeing any that really stand out to me. Like there's David Perron. I don't think that they'd be willing to part ways with him, and he's only got one more year on his deal, so yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Plus, I don't think he would waive his no move clause to go to LA right now. Looking at, there is something to be said about the potential for Vladimir Tarasenko to get traded with all the injuries that he's had recently, and the fact that St. Louis has done all right without him being, there and productive every single game. With that being said, again, he's another guy with a no move clause. Would he be willing to waive that to go to LA? Maybe. I think he'd be more likely to, because you look at his current situation, he's not really a go-to guy there anymore. Well, he goes to LA and he can be the go-to guy. So that could be a trade we could explore here. And guys like Robert Thomas are kind of coming up and taking his role a little bit. Obviously, he didn't have the greatest season this past season either, but I like this potential for a Tarasenko trade. There is one more team actually that I want to look at, and that's Calgary. Now again, this is a Pacific to Pacific trade, so take this with a grain of salt, but I do like Johnny Gaudreau because I do think that they are potentially, well, not potentially, I think they're going to look to move on from him this summer. They've underperformed the last couple of years, and their main core of star players haven't been performing the way that they'd really hope. So that being said, can kind of get a trade going here. So in exchange, they will send their 2022 first, which is a high price, probably not going to be a playoff pick in all honesty, but I think potentially being able to trade for Johnny Gaudreau and then sign him to an extension right away would be something that allows them to feel comfortable with trading that pick away. And then looking at some of the prospects, because they have really an abundance of them. So some of the guys that they could look at are Rasmus Kupari, I think would be kind of in the surplus category. They have a lot of center prospects, probably not something that they need all of them for. And then looking at something else, kind of a sweetener for the deal, because I don't think it goes through as is. Well, I guess it could actually. Maybe they just throw in another kind of later round pick, like a 4th round pick, because I just love acquiring draft picks if I'm any team giving up a star player here. So overall, make that trade happen. Johnny Gaudreau, new member of the LA Kings. I think this is something that we could see happen this summer. I would say of all the teams that Johnny Gaudreau could go to, this probably isn't the most likely. I've had a lot of mock trades in the past of him going to the Flyers, and I thought that was a really good situation for them, and I really like the return that I've come up with for those in the past, which I'll talk about once I get to my Calgary video. But for the sake of these offseason predictions, I will have him going to LA. So we can take Wagner out now. He's now a scratch. Put Lemieux on the other side, and I guess we pull Cale Clegg down to the minors for now. And that's kind of what LA would be looking at next year. Personally, I think that because I love their prospects so much, and I do think that a lot of them are ready to have that NHL impact. Actually, one second. I'm going to put Kemp on the second line. I think he's a bit better offensively than Iafallo, but there's a lot to like about Iafallo offensively as well, obviously. But yeah, looking at that, I mean, then you end up with a third line of Iafallo, Turcotte, and Dustin Brown. That's going to be one of the most solid third lines in the league if they can keep that together. You got Lemieux, Anderson Dolan, and Carl Grundstrom as a really solid fourth line. Really, like, up and down this lineup, you start to kind of see the potential here. And you know, if you want to try and go on some more runs before Kopitar and Doughty, you know, get too old to really lead this team, you know, this is the way to do it. So if you like my moves that I've made in this video, especially the Johnny Gaudreau trade, please let me know by liking the video and leaving comments down below. If you didn't like the trade, let me know why. You know, maybe you're a Calgary fan and you feel like LA didn't give up enough for a star player in Johnny Gaudreau, or you know, you don't like that. You know, you're an LA fan and you don't like that you had to give up a prospect like Rasmus Kupari to make this trade happen. Either way, let me know in the comments down below, and please consider subscribing if you would like to see more content like this in the future.